How this terrible K2 climbing disaster took 11 lives. 11 lives intertwine in a dance with destiny on the treacherous slopes of K2. Against the backdrop of breathtaking beauty and bone-chilling danger, delve into the heart-wrenching stories of these climbers who paid the ultimate price in their quest to conquer the unconquerable, forever etching their names in mountaineering history. There are a few mountains that are considered much more difficult from a technical aspect, and one of them is the second tallest mountain in the world, known simply as K2, standing at 28,251 meters. K2 is just 778 meters shorter than Everest, but its difficulty in climbing is legendary. In fact, it is widely regarded as the most difficult mountain to climb in the world. Located on the border of Pakistan and China, K2 is nicknamed Savage Mountain due to its unforgiving nature. Climbers can become convinced that the mountain is actively trying to kill them, and sadly, it often succeeds. Approximately 25% of those who reach the summit of K2 never make it off the mountain alive. There are several reasons why K2 is so challenging to conquer. Its slopes are treacherous, the weather is extremely poor, avalanches are a constant threat, and the mountain is constantly steep and rigid. Unlike Everest, which occasionally flattens out, K2 maintains its relentless steepness throughout. Additionally, all the challenges related to high altitude that exist on Everest. Once climbers ascend above 26,000 feet, they enter the death zone, where their bodies start to deteriorate cell by cell. Furthermore, even reaching base camp on K2 is a treacherous journey through glacial ice, rock, and snow. It is a mountain reserved for the elite of the elite, not for casual mountaineers seeking Instagram-worthy summit photos. While there are various routes up K2, the most common and comparatively easier route is known as the Abruzzi Spur on the southeast ridge. This route is used by 75% of K2 climbers. Nevertheless, the challenges on this route are relentless, and the most dangerous section is known as the bottleneck. Situated just 1,300 feet below the summit, the bottleneck is a narrow couloir overhung by dangerous seracs, blocks of glacial ice that can topple and kill without warning. Climbers must expose themselves to these seracs for over 300 feet as they traverse the bottleneck. Unfortunately, the K2 bottleneck played a significant role in the most deadly single accident in the history of the mountain. This tragic event, known as the 2008 K2 disaster, unfolded during the climbing season from June to August. However, due to unfavorable weather conditions, no summit attempts were made in June or July. As a result, 10 different groups of climbers were waiting for a favorable weather window, and it appeared that their opportunity would arrive around August 1st. On the day before July 31st, several groups reached Camp 4 and decided to team up for an August 1st summit attempt. Among these groups were multiple international teams, including an American team and a Pakistani team of high-altitude porters, known as HAPs. Unfortunately, Shaheen Beg, the most experienced HAP who had successfully climbed K2 in 2004, was suffering from severe high-altitude sickness and had to descend. His leadership and knowledge would be sorely missed. The HAPs, along with some Sherpas and team, were responsible for fixing the ropes before the final summit push. However, they made a critical error by planting the ropes too low on the mountain, just above Camp 4 where they were unnecessary. Consequently, they ran out of rope closer to the bottleneck where the ropes were vital. After departing for the summit around 3 a.m., the climbers realized the problem and were forced to remove the lower ropes themselves in order to reinstall them above the bottleneck. This unexpected setback caused a massive delay. Sensibly, several climbers made the decision to abandon the summit attempt immediately and return to Camp 4. Dr. Eric Meyer and Swedish climber Fredrik Strang were among those who recognized that the conditions were unsuitable for a successful summit and safe return. However, despite the tragedies that had already occurred and the late hour, many climbers continued pushing forward, seemingly driven by summit fever. One climber who possessed remarkable foresight was Nicholas Rice. Instinctively, he understood that the mission was already a failure and decided to turn back. He He emphasized, "Someone had just died on the route I was attempting to climb. Clearly, the ropes weren't fixed correctly, and I wasn't going to risk that." K2 is already the hardest mountain to climb in the world. You don't need any added difficulties. Regrettably, many others disregarded the mounting tragedies in the late time. Most of the climbers who reached the summit did so around 8 p.m., significantly later than the typical 3 to 5 p.m. summit window. Alberto Zerain, a Spanish, was the only one who did not encounter problems on the way down. He had departed earlier than the others and reached the summit at 3 p.m. However, for the remaining climbers, descending in darkness was a recipe for disaster. As members of the Norwegian group navigated the traverse leading to the bottleneck, a cerro broke off from above, cutting the fixed lines and sweeping 33-year-old Rolf Ba, who had turned back 330 feet short of the summit, off the mountain to his death. The rest of the Norwegian group, including Ba's wife, managed to make it back to Camp 4. However, with the fixed lines destroyed and ice chunks scattered everywhere, the bottleneck became even more perilous, if not impossible, for most climbers to traverse. Panic spread among the climbers who still needed to pass through the bottleneck. A few brave souls attempted to descend in darkness without fixed ropes or fall protection devices. Thankfully, they received assistance from Sherpas who had climbed up the mountain to aid those descending. Despite the Sherpas' help, more deaths were inevitable. Ij de Volder, a 61-year-old climber who had attempted K2 twice before and was making one final attempt, decided to descend in darkness. With his oxygen supply depleted, he needed to get down as quickly as possible. The death toll now stood at 4, and the tragedy was far from over. Several climbers, including 3 Korean men who were entangled in ropes, were swept off the mountain in a massive ice fall. One of the Sherpas who had climbed up to assist in the rescue also lost his life. The total number of dead climbers now reached 11, marking it as the deadliest single disaster in the history of K2. The positions of the bodies of the entangled men after being swept off the mountain indicated that they had been freed from the ropes before their deaths. Supporting the accounts of Wilco van Ruijen and Sherpa Himba Gauch, Van Ruijen, despite losing all his toes, miraculously survived and became one of the very few people to endure 2 nights in the death zone. Marco Confortola, another survivor, went on to share stories of his efforts to save others, spending hours trying to help the entangled men. He also recounted how Jerry McDonald, in a hypoxic state due to high-altitude sickness, climbed back up the mountain in confusion. The details surrounding these accounts have been brought into question as the memories of the survivors conflict, but what remains indisputable is the fact that 11 climbers lost their lives in the tragedy. Following the disaster, the Pakistani military initiated a rescue operation on 4th, 2008, using helicopters to rescue several remaining climbers. In the subsequent years, there were no successful summits of K2 in 2009 or 2010. Tragically, some climbers, including Frederick Eriksson, lost their lives in their pursuit of conquering the mountain. As of February 2021, only 377 people have reached the summit of K2, with a staggering 91 deaths. The 2008 K2 disaster serves as a chilling reminder of the inherent dangers associated with mountaineering, particularly on a mountain as formidable as K2. It highlights the importance of making prudent decisions, even in the face of immense challenges, and the desire to reach the summit. The loss of 11 lives in this disaster emphasizes the need for meticulous planning, careful consideration of weather conditions, and a keen understanding of the mountain's risks. The journey to conquer K2 is undoubtedly a treacherous one. Its reputation as the most difficult mountain to climb in the world is well-deserved. The 2008 K2 disaster stands as a grim testament to the perils that climbers face on Savage Mountain. With its steep slopes, unpredictable weather, and deadly bottlenecks, K2 demands exceptional skill, experience, and resilience from those who dare the challenges. As we reflect on the lives lost in this terrible disaster, it serves as a somber reminder of the unforgiving nature of the mountains and the need for utmost caution and respect when venturing into their realms.